Republic of Congo has reportedly put a deal on the table for US President Donald Trump. It has called for help in defeating the rebel forces in exchange for access to a trove of minerals that are needed by the US high-tech firms.
I think their gold could cancel all of the US debt. Just their gold. It's like trillions of dollars. We should be the richest country on earth for natural resources. Diamonds, coltan, gold.
We are very happy to see that with the Trump administration, things are moving a lot faster on both sides.
Coltan, 85% of it comes from the Congo. 100% of that is slave mined. And all of our smartphones and smart TVs and smart devices have coltan in it.
Untapped deposits are worth an estimated $24 trillion. What would you need to happen to move forward with that relationship?
We want to extract these minerals, but also process them, as this would create a lot of jobs. And we want a partnership that will provide lasting peace and stability for our countries, which we need.
If the United States of America and the DRC make a partnership deal where the US is the primary security force in exchange for mineral resources, this could be the biggest global trade partnership between two countries we've ever seen. This is the kind of deal currently being discussed between the two nations right now, and I don't think people understand what type of implications a deal like this means for global economics. So if that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. For those of you that don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed. I grew up mostly in the United Kingdom, but a couple of years ago, I packed up everything and moved to Uganda to start a new life with my partner, Medina. One of the things I'm interested in is the betterment of Africa. And since I moved to Africa, I've been way more aware of the relationship between Africa and the rest of the world. I'm always trying to answer the question, why is Africa not reaching its full potential? I think we all know that the potential is vast, and one country in particular in Africa stands out as having one of the highest potentials of all African nations. That is, of course, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't think people comprehend just how much untapped resources and undiscovered resources are in the DRC. So I put together some information using some AI tools, and we're going to look at the potential impact and implications if the US becomes the primary security force in Congo.
Okay, so minerals for security. Break that down a little bit. What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, essentially it boils down to the DRC. They've got all these, massive reserves of critical minerals, and they're basically saying, hey, US, if you help us out with military assistance and like that, we'll give you access to these really valuable resources.
And it sounds like we're not just talking about a small amount of minerals here, right?
No, not at all. I mean, some of the estimates we're seeing suggest that the DRC could have something like $24 trillion worth of untapped mineral wealth.
Before I started making this video, I did not know that the number was so high. Imagine if those resources are refined, put into products that can actually be used in the world. That number could double.
Sitting there.
24 trillion.
Trillion with a T.
Wow, that's a mind-boggling number. I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest resource pools anywhere in the world.
It's absolutely huge. And it really puts into perspective why everyone's so interested in this potential partnership.
Yeah, I mean, the implications here are massive, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about things that could, really shift the balance of power globally, affect the whole green energy transition, and of course have a huge impact on what's happening on the ground in Central Africa.
I mean, they have absolutely extraordinary reserves of some of the most important minerals in the world. I mean, the DRC holds something like over 70% of the world's known cobalt reserves.
70%?
That's right. And cobalt is, absolutely essential for making the batteries that power electric vehicles and so many other things.
There's nobody living alive today in the modern world that does not touch the minerals that are produced in this place. That means that billions of people rely upon the resources. But again, that just really seals just how important this stuff is for all of us.
So basically the DRC is sitting on a gold mine. Well, not literally a gold mine, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. It's a treasure.
Literally a gold mine. There is gold deposits there that the world has not yet discovered. So yes, they're literally sitting on a gold mine.
But this deal isn't just about the U.S. getting access to these minerals, right? There's talk about something called exclusive access. What does that actually mean?
Right. So exclusive access essentially means that American companies would get preferential treatment. They'd be first in line to buy these minerals from the DRC.
Okay, so it's like cutting the line, getting ahead of everybody else.
In a way, yeah. And this is a really big deal because right now China is the dominant player in the global mineral supply chain. I mean, they control something like 65% of the cobalt processing, for example.
Wow, 65%. That's a pretty tight grip.
This is where BRICS comes into it, right? There is a direct conflict of interest with China. So China process most of the world's cobalt, and in that way, they control the world's cobalt industry as well. This is where we start seeing the potential for conflict, for friction, for issues.
It's a chance to, kind of loosen China's grip on these critical resources and secure their own supply.
Right.
So the U.S. is essentially proposing a two-pronged approach, offering both security assistance and economic investment. On the security side, the U.S. is talking about providing things like military training equipment and potentially even deploying some of their own troops.
Troops on the ground.
Well, that's still up in the air, but it's definitely on the table.
I think it's almost guaranteed that boots on the ground will have to be part of this deal, which makes this potentially even more inflammatory if that is not the outcome that you want, particularly if you're China or some other country or group that is trying to make sure they can get the resources out of that place.
And the main goal here is to help the DRC deal with the various armed groups.
There are armed groups all over the place in the DRC. They control mines, they control territories, they're made up of all sorts of different groups that are funded by all sorts of different groups and companies. The DRC government is so stretched because of the geography, because of the infrastructure issues, that groups can just set up shop and control whole areas on behalf of corporations and governments.
Now, on the economic side, the U.S. is talking about encouraging private sector investment in the DRC's mining sector.
So if there is US security on ground, there will be improvement all around, and it will make investment in general at all levels more comfortable in the country. Investors will say, hey, America's over there. America's providing stability through their security services. So I can go in there and invest in this sector or that sector. And then you're going to have people flying in, coming in. You're going to have real estate. You're going to have infrastructure. You're going to have all these knock-on effects based off this security platform. It really could move the needle economically for both parties, particularly DRC, in terms of quality of life for the people that live there.
So it's not just about extracting the minerals. It's about, investing in the country as a whole.
Right. It's about building something sustainable. And that's something that the DRC is definitely looking for. Well, one of the biggest potential rewards for the DRC is the possibility of finally achieving some peace and stability. It would be huge. I mean, we've talked about how bad the situation is there with all the armed groups and the violence and displacement.
Millions displaced, thousands killed.
It's a humanitarian crisis. And if the U.S. can really help the DRC to get a handle on the situation, bring some security to the region, that would be an enormous benefit for the Congolese people. The DRC has all these mineral resources, but they haven't always been able to translate that wealth into real improvements for their people.
Of course, the DRC president is talking about doing value addition on ground, creating jobs, creating a situation where the DRC can profit at a higher level rather than just selling raw materials, which is something that has been echoed all over Africa right now.
Right, because a lot of the existing mining deals have been criticized for not being very transparent or beneficial to local communities.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about corruption and exploitation, and some of the analysis suggests that these deals, particularly the ones involving Chinese companies, have been pretty opaque. Not a lot of clarity about where the money's going or...
Blood is on everyone's hands. I'm sorry. It's not just China or whatever. It's everywhere. It's the Europeans. It's neocolonialism. It's the Chinese. Everybody. Since I've been alive, there has been mass corruption issues, problems. It's not just China. It's everyone. I don't know if this kind of deal is going to be able to end that. It very well may, if it's consolidated into one group or a few small groups.
The hope is that this could be a more equitable partnership, one that prioritizes transparency, accountability, and the development of the DRC's economy in a way that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Do you think Trump is capable of that? I would love to know, put in the comments, if you think Trump is capable of an equitable deal.
Yeah, and then you've got all these other groups, ethnic tensions, smuggling networks. It's a really messy situation.
This hornet's nest.
It is. And trying to stabilize that region is going to be incredibly difficult and expensive. It would require a massive commitment of resources, potentially, including a significant military presence.
Right. And that's something that the U.S. might be hesitant to do, getting bogged down in another protracted conflict.
Exactly. And that's one of the big risks here. The U.S. could get drawn into a quagmire, trying to prop up a weak government in a region that's incredibly unstable, and that could end up backfiring badly.
Yeah. And what about the economic side of things? I mean, we talked about that $24 trillion figure.
Yeah.
But is that really realistic?
No, that's a good question. I mean, that figure is based on geological surveys, which are, estimations of how much mineral wealth is actually in the ground.
But getting it out of the ground is a whole other story.
Exactly. I mean, extracting those minerals would require a massive investment in infrastructure, mining operations, processing facilities, all that stuff.
Right.
If US provide the security, there will be a line round the block of companies wanting to take advantage of that stability and invest in whatever needs to be done in order to get that extraction done. I don't think that's an issue whatsoever.
Yeah, China is a major factor here. I mean, they're already heavily invested in the DRC's mining sector, and they're not going to be happy about the U.S. muscling in on their turf.
So what could they do?
Well, they could do a lot of things. I mean, they could try to pressure the DRC diplomatically, threaten to withdraw aid or investment. They could also try to undermine the deal economically, by offering better terms to the DRC.
Wouldn't that be a good thing for the DRC? If you've got two groups that are negotiating for a deal with you, then don't you have more leverage in that negotiation? I wonder how this is going to pan out. I think the talks are still on right now, and they're probably going to last quite a bit of time. I can see why this works very well for both sides, but there's no doubt about it. There is a healthy amount of risk. The landscape is so vast geographically, then the amount of players on the field is also complex, vast, and sticky. My overarching hope is that we can do things like stop child labor, stop the exploitation, the neo-colonialism. One of the things that is not brought up here is all of the intertribal difficulties, intertribal relationships. Some of those tribes bleed over into other countries, even though they're ethnically the same. So there's all kinds of alliances, there's all kinds of loyalties and interests that don't necessarily just come in a simple DRC package. So I think it's not a given that America accepts this deal, but I think they will try and exhaust every possibility to see if they can get this deal done. I'm sure you guys have your many opinions about this situation. Please feel free to put them in the comments section. But if you don't have anything to say, would it be too much for me to ask you to write the words "peace in a DRC"? It lets me know that you've watched the video to the end, you like what I'm doing with this channel, and you want me to continue. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.
Thank you.